Maddox. I'm your biggest fan.
For over 20 years, I've run one of the longest-running humor sites on the internet. I've published books, worked on TV shows, and even video games. Along the way, I've met thousands of fans. Most of them have been awesome, but some, unfortunately, have become obsessed and tried to get into my personal life. This is the story of what happens when fans become stalkers.
Maddox and that. Maddox.
Fanboy realized very quickly that the only time people seemed to pay attention to him was when he was talking about me. Once I cut him off from my audience, he had to keep finding or making reasons to keep talking about me. And I'm not self-aggrandizing, these are actual comments he received from people who've repeatedly stated that his non-Maddox content was boring. People found themselves tuning out when it wasn't about me, telling him to review more Maddox stuff because it's all he's good for. And listeners openly admitting that it needs more Maddox and it was the only reason to listen because otherwise the show was boring and unrelatable. Over and over and over again, people complained that the show was boring when it wasn't about me. And when he's not obsessively talking about me for content, he's obsessively writing about me, which is also apparently what people search for. His own followers even rank the most crucial episodes to listen to, and 20 of the top 23 are about me. He doesn't seem able to produce any worthwhile content that doesn't have something to do with me. In fact, he's so desperate, at one point he even said he'd be willing to get castrated for more news about me, which ironically, still wouldn't be as emasculating as him acting like a jilted ex. And if you need any more proof that nobody gives a shit about him when he's not obsessing over me, a few of my fans even did an analysis of his top 10 most popular videos on his YouTube channel, and as of this recording, 8 of them are either about me or mention me in some way. That's 80% of his most popular content that has something to do with me. And of the 2 remaining videos, they're just promo clips, and even then, one of them has my logo on the screen the entire time. Maddox Blast! So, by now you may be wondering, why is he so obsessed? Well, I touched on it briefly, but one of the main reasons is predictably money. When he realized talking about me was his biggest draw, he started putting it behind a paywall. For example, he decided to publish unreleased episodes we recorded from my old podcast as an incentive to sell tickets to live events. And of course, he didn't share any of the profits with me. He just used my content and pocketed the profits like a thief. But his biggest moneymaker is a segment on his podcast where he talks about so-called gossip about my life, which consists of slander and dishonest rumors about me. He'll tease stories publicly for free, but then he puts the full story behind paywalled bonus episodes. In fact, his own dopey followers have even acknowledged that this is the reason they pay. The only problem is these stories are fake, misleading, or full of lies. They sound scandalous until you realize they're absolutely bullshit. He's accused me of everything from credit card fraud, to impersonating a police officer, to being polyamorous, and even money laundering, like I'm some sort of Armenian Walter White.
And I lie all the time, I don't care.
This is a pattern with him. He'll praise people when he wants something from them, but he goes on the attack the minute they reject him. It's pandering and slandering. He did it with me, he did it with his ex-co-host, and he did it when he tried poaching one of my guests, praising him when he wanted something, but when he gets rejected, his true colors come out. And he did it with one of his ex-girlfriends who he called an angel while they were dating, but after they broke up, he told her... He even did this with the shaving brand Harry's. When he wanted their sponsorship, he praised them. But when he gets rejected, his true colors come out and he says their razors are shit and cut up your neck. And as if the pandering and slandering wasn't bad enough, he also steals funny stories that I've told him and retells them in a less funny way, except he changes them to paint me in a negative light. And of course, he'll tease them for free, but then he hides the full story behind a paywall.
Maddox tried to get a job last year. Maybe I'll tell that story in the next bonus episode. It was pretty fucking funny.
And I want to emphasize that these are stories I've told him that he's retelling and charging money for. It's beyond pathetic. At this point, I should be able to declare him as a dependent on my tax returns. In Robert Greene's book, The Laws of Human Nature, I came across something that made my jaw drop. Greene described Fanboy's personality with such specificity that not only are the details specific to him, but so are the sequence of events.
The passive-aggressive charmer and envy triggers.
These types are amazingly nice and accommodating when you first meet them, so much so that you tend to let them into your life rather quickly. They smile a lot. They are upbeat and always willing to help. At some point, you may return the favor by helping them in their careers. You will detect along the way some cracks in the veneer. Perhaps you hear from friends that they have been talking about you behind your back. Then something ugly occurs, a blow-up, some act of sabotage or betrayal. So unlike that nice, charming person you first befriended. The truth is that these types realize early on in life that they have aggressive, envious tendencies that are hard to control. They secretly resent having to be so deferential. Under stress or simply worn out by the effort, they will lash out and hurt you. They can do this well now that they know you and your weak spots. They will, of course, blame you for what ensues. If you notice that, somewhat out of character, they indulge in malicious gossip about someone, you can be sure that you will be the target of such gossip one day. Their form of attack is to gather information that they can leak or spread as gossip. Gossip about the powerful becomes an industry.
This stalker has done just that, but money alone probably can't explain his entire neurotic obsession with me. Taking a closer look might reveal something going on a much deeper psychological level. Late one night while doing research for this video, one of my fans stumbled upon a very disturbing discovery. On December 31st, most people usually go out and celebrate with friends and family for New Year's Eve. But not this stalker. He was home stewing feverishly about me on Reddit, post after post after post. And not just on New Year's Eve, but Christmas too. And the year before that, and in 2019, and in 2020. So while most people are out drinking and getting laid, Fanboy was sitting on Reddit, obsessing over me. And this wasn't just for show. He was replying to individual posts only read by a handful of people. And then on New Year's Day, he continued posting on the same thread about me and the old podcast. This seems to go much deeper than just money. But his obsession gets even worse, because Fanboy wasn't content with relentless smears, stalking, and harassment. He set out to actively destroy all my sources of income. It's one thing to slander somebody, but it's another to try to make it so the other person can't live, and that's exactly what Fanboy has been doing for over half a decade. He not only does this personally, but he also asks his small mob of sycophants to harass and attack on his behalf. And that's not an exaggeration. He spelled it out on his website, saying that if you build it, we will crash it. He said this in response to an announcement I made about a book signing, and even offered to pay people to show up and harass me in person. And not just once, he's done this on multiple occasions. And a few of his followers and contributors actually did. Like this alcoholic dipshit who's a recurring guest on Fanboy's podcast. He took time away from wishing that segregation was still a thing, and complaining about how Jews lie through their teeth to crowdsource suggestions from Fanboy's hate group. Then he took a picture of the names of people who signed up on a contact form I had and posted their names and email addresses online. With just the right manipulation and exploitation of someone's personal beliefs, you can get people to do just about anything, including spamming fake negative reviews to hurt book sales, and that's exactly what this stalker has done. In October of 2017, the week my new book came out, Fanboy personally tried to damage my book sales by leaving a 1-star review on Goodreads. This was the second negative review under his name, and the first one was posted months before my book even came out. So the guy I tried to help get a book deal, invited to countless pitch meetings, and vouched for him at a comedy club, repays me by stalking and attacking my book when he couldn't get a deal of his own. Awesome. What a great friend. Now, normally you might think it's just a couple negative reviews, no big deal, right? Except that wasn't scummy enough for Fanboy. He then personally told his small mob to spam fake negative reviews by coordinating the attack from IRC. He even asked someone to leave a 2-star review, and when asked why, as a testament to how manipulative he is, he said because 2-star disappointment hurts more than 1-star hatred. Then they proceeded to spam my book with fake negative reviews, including the 2-star review he asked for, posted within hours of his request. They did this by using multiple real and fake accounts, and they boasted about their attacks on Reddit and congratulated themselves for trying to tank my book sales. Some of them even bragged about how Fanboy used his SEO experience to try to game Amazon for a referral link. This fake review campaign was part of a larger push coordinated by his hate mob on Reddit months before my book even came out. Then Fanboy rewarded these people by publicizing their fake reviews on Twitter and Facebook. And all of this is definitely against Amazon's terms of service. And if you're wondering if any of this made a difference, well, imagine if you were going to buy a product and the first thing you saw was 30 or so consecutive negative reviews. Would that affect your decision? If you're like most people, probably. And that's part of the reason why this eventually became a legal matter. These people set out to cause as much damage as possible based on the whims of an obsessed stalker who manipulated people with years of slander. I spent 2 years of my life working hard on my latest book, along with a team of editors, assistants, cover artists, illustrators, designers, copywriters, and sound engineers for the audio version. Fanboy wasn't just attacking me, he was attacking all of these people's jobs. And what's worse is that according to the person who came forward about the Bitcoin Fanboy kept from me, he even paid people to write fake negative reviews of my book. When Fanboy couldn't get a book deal of his own, even with my help, he channeled all his anger and frustration into trying to destroy mine. It's an absolute referendum on a person's inability to achieve when instead of trying to build something on their own, they try to destroy the hard work of others. And when spreading malicious slander and gossip about me and encouraging fake reviews wasn't enough, in an ultimate act of envy punctuated by impotent rage, Fanboy even created a book burning campaign to encourage people to burn my books. He even offered people rewards for burning them along with my merchandise. And sadly, this won't be the last thing this mob will have in common with another famous mob of book burners, as you'll see later in this video. Ironically, this means that my book can now proudly join the pantheon of other books burned throughout history. And although the reasons for this book burning are different, the goal is the same: to eradicate the views and philosophies of people you don't like. And like all book burnings throughout history, it's fueled by hatred and small dick energy. If this was all they did, it would be a shitty footnote on a shitty person's sad, failed comedy career. But this came on the heels of Fanboy targeting several of my sponsors. For example, I had a sponsor for a mobile app that Fanboy targeted, which sent his hate mob to flood it with rape and death threats shortly after his targeting. They made countless rape threats against the girl I was dating at the time. And if you have any doubt this was their doing, this is the pattern of behavior consistent with how Fanboy and his hate mob attacks anyone associated with me. For example, when I booked a musician on my podcast, he harassed her even though it had nothing to do with him. Even if you think in some crazy universe there exists some justification to attack anyone like this, it still doesn't justify him attacking random people I associate with. From my guests to my co-hosts and even my audio engineer, anyone who even breathes the same air as me gets harassed. For example, when I did an interview with a journalist for a small media website, even though it had nothing to do with him, Fanboy spent half a day obsessively harassing her. And then his mob followed suit and told her to kill herself, calling her a pig, a worthless cunt, and telling her to construct a noose. At one point, Fanboy's regular co-host and contributor at the time, a guy named Asterios Kokkinos, who I talked about in another video, encouraged his followers to review my podcast and even shared instructions on how to create accounts using fake credentials, which is how a handful of people with a dozen or so fake accounts can leave hundreds of fake negative reviews. Most online companies have tools to report and remove individual posts, but not coordinated mob attacks orchestrated by people like Asterios and Fanboy across multiple social media websites to make cross-platform attacks. This kind of bullshit isn't even considered as a use case for most social media platforms, and it can become a more pressing issue when it comes to doxing.